Hey gang, you are with Matuska Taxidermy Supply Company, and we are here with Amber Ingalls and Brett Wingfield. Tom is in Utah judging, and they just did a walkthrough. So for those of you tuning in, he just did a walkthrough with Derek Harriman, and it was Utah Best of the West Taxidermy Competition and a Sportsman Expo in the same, and they had a lot of really cool pieces there. Yeah, a lot.
They do. That's a great show.
So you can actually go to our Facebook page and check that out and watch them. They had I thought this was unique, a 3-hour live mule deer mounting competition.
Wow.
So you bring in, I don't know how many were doing it, but I think 3 of like the 5 were sagebrush series being mounted on. Ross Richards says the easiest mule deer forms to mount on. But they do this 3 hours, they put together the mule deer, and then they get judged on it, and then they have a prize.
Yeah, I've heard of the timed competitions and stuff.
Yeah,
like that before.
So that was really cool. So today, since he's in Utah, we decided to do skinning small mammal and hide preparation. So Brett and Amber are gonna walk you guys through that, and make sure to comment any questions you have. Let us know where you're watching from. I see some Australia. Share it. I see people sharing. That's awesome. Share away, and we will pick a winner from last week's share, which is our curved scissors that are new. And then we'll pick next week. We'll have another share. And next week is actually going to be Corey Crothers, and he is going to be mounting a flying widgeon and the most common mistakes people make positioning the wings and how to correct that while reading the reference.
Wow.
So we got a couple
big
ones coming up. So Amber and Brett, take it away with your skinning. I'm super excited to get close into this one.
All right. Well, we decided that this would be a good seminar to go over because we haven't really covered a whole lot of this as far as raw animals, and we've kind of tried to steer away from it because we don't like to get down and dirty a lot of times.
Trying to save the camera.
Sure.
Trying to keep the comments to a minimum.
But it's a huge part of taxidermy. I mean, come right down to it. It all starts with how you handle your hides and your animals and care for them, and right down from how long you take the thong to the cuts, and properly removing all of the tissue. And that's an area that I see a lot of people lacking in, and they just kind of skip a lot of steps when it comes to really getting these hides clean and thin. Thin to win, really, is kind of the...
Good taxidermy starts right here, right now, the minute it hits the table. And that's kind of why we thought that we start at this point. Just finished a class.
Yep.
We know that was something that students needed to work on, and Amber had some hides out today to prep, skin and prep, and thought we'd share that with you.
Otter, and that's how, people who do otter.
I smelled that one right when I came in.
You know how much fun that those can be.
Rob says we're early today, and that we are, and the reason is Brett has gotten, could they not make it to the South Dakota? Was it Rick Crane?
Yeah, Rick's flight got canceled, got a call last night, and so I'm gonna sub for Rick in South Dakota tomorrow, judging out there. So he's got to get ready and packed and get on the road. There's some weather kind of coming our way. So we are early today, and we kind of like being a little early, so not going to lie, we might start summer hours here shortly. But make sure you like and follow our page, and you can always check out ones that you've missed, and that way you will be notified when we do go live early or late or random or whatever it may be. So they're getting a double dose today.
Yes.
They are.
Yeah. And next week too, Tom's going to be in Minnesota next week.
Well, they're going to get a whole bunch of doses because I believe you're going to go live at the South Dakota show walkthrough.
Tomorrow, yep.
And then also you're doing a Pam Pastel live seminar.
Yep, 3 o'clock tomorrow.
And then next week, Corey, and then the Minnesota show, and then the next week something, and then the Iowa show.
I think they're going to be sick of us.
These shows are stressful.
It's that time of year.
But yeah, so make sure you like our page and follow us because you'll get notified for all of those.
We got a lot to cover.
Yeah,
Okay.
we do. All right.
Go.
So first off, we're going to go over measuring, and then we want to make sure that we do that before we even start thinking about anything. We want to make sure that we get all of our measurements. We like using these flexible measuring tapes. They work real nice instead of using yardstick or anything
Sure,
like that.
yeah.
These are great. They cover your length and circumference all in one. So we start off with measurement sheets that look kind of like this, and they're just real basic. They don't have to be super detailed. If you're planning on doing some competition pieces and things like that, I would go to a more complex measuring sheet. But typically, these measuring sheets work pretty good for us, and it just covers your eye to nose, eyes, or the tip of nose to the base of the tail, maybe to the back of the skull, tip of nose to the back of the skull, couple of circumferences up around the belly, circumference up around the neck. Those are really your major ones. So I will do that first here. Brett, do you want to write down the measure here real quick?
Yep. This sheet is depicting a bear. It's not going to matter. It doesn't have to be species specific.
Okay, so we got a 1 7/8 inch eye to nose.
1 7/8. Pretty typical of a nice big bobcat, male bobcat.
And then when I'm doing this, I'm just kind of following this line and going all the way down and just kind of inching my way down. And to test where your base of the tail is, I just take that tail and lift it up, and then just kind of put my thumb up at the top, and you can kind of feel where that last joint is, and that's where you're going to measure to. And that is going to be right around 31.
31 inches. So total length of 31 inches even.
Can I see that measurement sheet?
Yeah.
Where do you get your measurements sheets from?
This is one we've had in the notebook for years and years. I think Tom drew it long before there actually were bobcats. I think they were saber-toothed tigers, but this is a bear sheet, but it works for any mammals. And we've got several different ones for faces or heads, or this is just the one that we use for our mammals.
And then as you can see, I kind of wrote on there, I wrote the customer's name, and then I also wrote down the circle for the hair-on measurements. And this is because a lot of times when we get going, we'll measure first, and then sometimes you get in a really big hurry and you forget to measure after, and that's a really common problem, especially with students. I don't have much of a problem with it anymore, but you can kind of, if you take the hair-on measurements, no matter what, then at least you got something to base off of. But sometimes there can be up to a 2-inch difference in your circumferences from hair on to hair off. So you do want to, after we completely remove this hide, we will want to go ahead and make measurements again. They had a neck measurement of 11 inches with the hair on. And then we got 18 1/4
At the chest.
At the chest, yep. And then we'll say 19.
19-inch belly.
Yep. And then we'll do one more for tip of nose to the back of the skull. And again, I'm just putting my thumb back here and just kind of feeling to see where the back of the skull is. And it is out 7 1/4.
Just a reminder, we are live and we are missing a few of our regular people, and I'm using my phone. So if for some reason it does quit in the middle, just get out of it, go back to our Facebook page, and we'll continue on. It just might start over. It's technology, it's our Wi-Fi, it happens if that were to happen.
Yep. All right, so now we got to decide how we're going to skin this animal. And there's several different cuts that we can do. Brett kind of has a nice little diagram up here to kind of show some of the different ones. This is a dorsal cut, and that would be an option for this bobcat. I'm not afraid of dorsal cuts on a lot of animals. As long as you have nice, pretty stitching, you can go ahead and do dorsal cuts without being too afraid. Now, there's certain animals that we would definitely
Omer
not.
just said awesome, that's his bobcat.
Oh. There's certain animals that we certainly would not do it on, and that would be animals with really even hair, like mink, otter, mountain lion. Would definitely never ever dorsal cut a mountain lion. But a dorsal cut, they have really short even hair, and it makes it hard for the to sew up the incision again, so that it's hidden. Yeah, so unless you have an otter that's laying on its back or something,
Right.
I definitely wouldn't put the incision in plain view on certain animals with a dorsal cut.
Okay.
So we're gonna, with the dorsal cut, you would start up here and we would go right down the back and go from somewhere up in the neck. You could even stop on the shoulder blade, but typically I like to come up onto the neck so that we have access to be able to get the head of the mannequin into the hide. And then you're gonna come all the way back down. You could come all the way close to the base of the tail. You don't necessarily have to. You could even stop it a little bit shy of that. And that way, when you go to sew, it's all right up on top and very easy to get to. You will still have to cut at the back of the feet, at the back of the legs, and at least go up 2 to 3 inches to give you enough room to be able to turn those feet out and get the toes out. So that's mainly what those short little incisions are on that. Now, belly cut is another option, and that's what we're gonna be doing for this guy here, is a belly cut, because he's gonna be a pose where the incision would hide the best if you would cut him up the belly. So this is a picture of if he was laying on his back and he had his arms stretched out, we would take and go from each pad of the foot and come here and go all the way up to his vent area. Same thing on that side, and you're following the very back, and you'll see that in a little bit. We're gonna come straight up the belly and kind of make a T across here, and then we would also come from each line, each of the feet, and go straight across there. So that's the incision that we're gonna be choosing to do for this. There is another type of skinning, and it's called a K-skin, and that would be, we use that a lot for hanging hides.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So when we do hanging hides, that would be kind of like you're gonna be starting a belly cut, and a K-skin would just be skinned from one back leg up to his vent area and then come back down the other leg and then just proceed to tube him out. You might still have to make a short incision here, again, just to be able to get those toes out, but other than that, yeah, we don't really use K-skins for a lot of other things. You could K-skin an otter, and be able to mount an otter K-skin. There are people out there who have a lot of success mounting K-skins. We typically don't do it just because most of the time it does complicate the mounting process, so we kind of steer away from mounting K-skins. But since we did do some of the other hides, we've got a couple of different hides kind of at different stages. So I'm gonna start skinning this.
Okay.
And then I think, Brett, you wanted to jump in and show a couple of different things.
We're gonna practice our multitasking today.
Yeah.
So while Amber is skinning, I'm gonna show you a little bit of prep, which we would do, of course, after the hide is off. But we've got some toes to take out, some face work, so we'll show you some ears and so forth. These are both otters.
I am so excited that I'm the camera person for this live.
Now, one thing, Amber, I was going to ask you. I notice a lot of people will cut on the inside of the leg. Do you cut the inside or the back of the leg?
I do the back of the leg,
Yeah.
because belly cuts are already so complicated to sew. And let's face it, a lot of times when you have these little, is it an awkward
Sorry,
position?
I'm
Let's turn it a
not
little bit like
usually
that.
here for
Okay.
this part.
So when these animals are positioned with the mannequins, a lot of times they have their legs together because they don't walk bow-legged, and you're going to have to sew that incision. So if you cut down through here, imagine you're going to have to do that entire thing and try to fit your hands inside of there. So if it's on the back side, it's a lot easier to get access to.
So the back side going right over the elbow, if it were the front leg.
Yep.
Or then,
And then typically, kind of like that picture, as you lay it out here, you kind of come here, and then I usually do go towards the elbow, and then somewhere in here I kind of come across. So it does,
Gotcha.
it kind of follows a little bit of that. It's not at the very back of the arm, but
and that works well on your big game life size stuff too, because oftentimes on the back of the leg there's a hair pattern, a longer hair pattern that's easier to cover the inside of the leg of a deer, for instance, or a sheep. Very, very short hair.
My dad always says to look at your dog or your animal because you can see the lines
where it
from
came
where
out
the
of the
hair,
mold.
where the mold lines.
Yeah.
Rob says he case skinned a red fox. Should I go back and skin it differently, fix it for the full mount?
Typically, what we do, if you case skin it for a mount, I would just finish cutting it up the belly and make it into a belly cut. Case skinning and mounting a case skinned red fox would be very difficult. Because they've got long legs. So like we said, the only time that we would really mess around with trying to mount a case skin, not saying it can't be done, because there are a lot of people who do it very successfully. But for us, I don't like messing with it. I would rather open it up and just take some more time sewing.
And being a fox, if it was appropriate, he could probably get away with making it a dorsal cut. Put together the case skin
and just
up to the legs.
He could sew it from here, from like this back joint up, just sew it up off of the mannequin, get it pre-sewed, and then turn it into a dorsal cut.
Yep.
And that would be a good option too, because that's a lot easier to be able to. That would be a lot easier to be able to mount.
I would love a pet bobcat.
I think they eat a lot.
They're pretty.
I think you'd have a hard time keeping them.
Okay.
So while you do that, we'll get, as you get started, Mandy, you can kind of show where she's starting from there, and then we'll get into the face here. One of the most important things for them, and you can go ahead and start, I'm just gonna ramble, but is taking care of the skin. And we've talked about it before, but this bobcat is thawed, and so the clock is ticking on the hide itself. Our major hurdle is bacteria growth, so we need to get this bobcat back to a stable point so that we can stop the growth of bacteria and the epidermal breakdown. So we're gonna get him skinned and to a point where he's ready to salt today. And to bacteria growth, that bacteria requires heat and moisture. Right now he's in a damp state and it's warm, room temperature, so real unstable. Once we get him skinned and prepped, we can do the salt work on him, dry him out, eliminate the moisture, and he'll be stable at that point.
And then when you're doing certain animals, you'll want to start to be careful when you come up around this area, because you could end up running into certain animals that have glands, and that's certainly will wreck your day. You don't want to be hitting those, so be aware if you're dealing with a beaver or a mink or
Otter.
Otter even.
I'm gonna put on some of the handy dandy black gloves, Mandy's favorite. But these are awful nice, and they'll get us through this process.
Yeah, I actually should be wearing gloves right now. I forget about it because as soon as I get to the skinning area and start fleshing, I have a difficult time trying to feel, but I am gonna put on gloves, especially when dealing with the backside.
We have to take our large white lab in to get her glands extracted every month. Every month. They said it's a small dog problem, but she's a large dog.
Yeah,
She's a big
she's
dog.
a big dog.
Big glands.
Big
dog, big
glands.
I wouldn't want to cut into it.
No.
No. That's yeah.
So you're just right at the pad of the foot?
And you could go up into the pad. We find that retexturing the pads is really not that difficult. So I'm not afraid to cut into the pad. For this one, I'm just kind of going starting right at or right behind it. But when we start turning the feet and getting out the toes, it's not a bad idea to just kind of come right through.
Jig and Jim wants to know if stop rot helps with skin issues.
Stop rot.
Stop rot's not something we use an awful lot of here in the shop. It has.
We sell an awful lot.
Yeah.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah.
It really does have its place, and a lot of people over the last several years have really migrated toward it. I think it's great insurance, and certainly would have an opportunity. We've managed to work through most of our issues just with good trophy care, and that starts with the hunter, of course. But when we get something into the shop, we evaluate it, we take care of it right away, and for the most part, we don't have a lot of call or need for it. But if you did take in something that wasn't well cared for in the field, I certainly think it would be that added dose of insurance.
What advice would you give to the hunter like Ryan Ulmer to say better care? Like you say, care for it in the field and whatnot. What would you tell them?
I think Ryan did a great job of taking care of this cat, it looks like.
Yeah, it's not freeze or burnt. A lot of it is just kind of common sense. Don't leave it sitting out, you know. Even if it's frozen, don't leave it sitting in the bed of your truck for 2 weeks before bringing it to your taxidermist. That's a pretty normal thing that a lot of people, I left it in the garage and it was frozen. It was, it was cold the whole time. Things will still freeze or burn and whatnot, and then we get them, and the eyes will be freeze or burn. The nose, the lips, ears, everything will all be hard as a rock from that continuous temperature change.
Yeah, and remember, these animals are designed with great insulation to protect them from the elements. So they will hold their heat in for an awful long time if you don't get them to a freezer right away. So they do stay warm. Be aware of that. Get them cold as quickly as you can, and keep blood to a minimum, and take care of them in the field as quickly as possible. Minimize the amount of time that they're out. A lot of people like to have their hero shots and take them, but once they've expired, this needs to be a priority. So small mammals, we don't open up the cavity, we don't gut them. I suppose if you were a long ways away from where you were going to try to get them cold, you could do that, but we typically don't.
Yeah. My dad wasn't lying when he said you were the one for this job. You're pretty fast at cutting. You were using a scalpel, looks like a number 6 blade. Is that a 22?
Number 22, yep.
22 on a 6 handle. Is that your preference? You have the number 11 out too.
I had the number 11 out more for the really detailed areas like the toes and whatnot. Be careful when you're coming up the belly area. You don't want to end up poking into a bad area up here. So make sure the incision is kind of shallow. You can kind of see I'm not being real careful about how deep I go. The only time I would worry about that is if I was planning on saving and using the carcass for some kind of molding purposes. But other than that, don't worry about poking into the meat. And then try to keep the hair out of the way so you don't lose your incision.
Worth mentioning too that in Iowa, bobcats are a nationally bobcats are a CITES animal. In Iowa, we have some specific. They require a special transportation tag. Okay. So we have to keep track of those. Amber has cut that one off, and it stays right next to him. We'll put it in our file. We'll keep track of the number. That's very important. Some states require it stays with them.
Where do you get it? The hunter gets it from the DNR?
From the DNR, correct. Okay. Yep. That should all happen long before he ever comes here. But just wanted to point out that we have that sitting there if anybody wanted to know what that yellow band was. It's a pretty important federally regulated item, so we'll take care of that. In some states, these are not considered game animals. They're considered predators, and that makes keeping track of them a little more difficult for us. But Texas, I think they're varmints. They don't have to have a tag or a license for them. But most states where they have trapping regulations, bobcats are considered fur bearers, and they have to have special tags and so forth for them. So you just went up the back of the leg, came straight across.
From one foot down, back up. I did choose to go around his area down there. I did choose to do that and come to the side. You could go through the middle, but I figured there's not really a whole lot of reason in messing that up and trying to put that back together in the middle of a seam. So I usually do go to the side and then just came straight up the belly. Now I'm gonna come and go from one arm to the other. I already did the one side, so I'll flip them around and do this last, and then it'll just be skin, skin, skin while you do all the face stuff.
It looks like you're using the Chicago cutlery now.
These are actually really nice. I prefer to make the incisions with the Chicago cutlery knife because it has a longer blade on it, and it can reach in without cutting hair. So it just kind of gets in there. Of course, right when I hit a bone is when I say that.
Yeah.
Those things are sharp. That's how I got my hook on my finger. I cut a tendon on a brand new Chicago cut.
Did you really?
Hold that for you.
Yeah. And then I do try to keep this T incision up here. Anybody who does or who has done a belly cut incision and tried to put it back together when you're mounting will know that it can be a little bit almost like a puzzle when you go to put it back together, because the skin stretches and distorts and whatnot. So I do try to make sure that T intersection is straight across from each other, so when you go to put it back together, it's not, oh, this side comes up here and that side goes down there. You know, keep it as even as you can.
So at this point, you're just gonna start peeling this away. I think it's worth mentioning, you can make life a whole bunch easier if you are fairly clean as you skin. Keep most of the membrane fats, meat tissue with the carcass. No need to take it with the skin if you're comfortable.
Right.
But for hunters that are watching this, do be careful. We should charge per inch of holes that they cut in them.
Oh boy.
We don't, but you can make a mess of some of these thinner hide animals pretty fast. So we ask you to be careful if you choose to do that.
Do you prefer to do the skinning yourself and have them bring it in full like Ryan did, or do you prefer them to do it out there?
Yeah,
No,
I'd prefer to do it.
Unless there were extreme circumstances where they didn't feel they could get it cold and they had to get the carcass out from the animal. It
And
helps
big
us a
animals,
lot.
just for transportation, sometimes it just isn't possible.
Yeah, but it does help us. We can take measurements from the carcass, and
Those will be more accurate than off of the skin.
we can make nice, clean cuts that we're comfortable and used to. So at this point, we've got another one that Amber had skinned earlier. So we've got the carcass out of this otter. And while she's working on that, I'm going to show you a little bit about what we would do next after the skin is off. And forgive us for jumping back and forth, but in order to get you through most of this process, we're going to have to do that.
It's a cooking channel.
It is.
Look, got the skin off.
So the carcass is out of this otter. We have the face here, inside out, nose, eyes, and we have ears back here, ear canal. So right now, we need to prioritize getting salt to the skin. And in this state, there's a lot of meat and tissue and this additional inside of the mouth skin that I'm gonna need to split. We're gonna butterfly that open, and I'll show you, it'll make more sense here in just a second. But we're gonna open that up, which will allow our salt to get all the way from here and get to the edge of the lip. So we're gonna come around here and just come up under the lip skin, like so. Whoops.
And this seems like something, this process here that Brett is doing seems to be like something that a lot of people are kind of steering away from, and we're hearing more and more and more people talk about how they go to tanneries that do this.
Service,
They offer the service of prepping the hide for you, which is not necessarily a bad tool to use, but at the same point, I think there's a lot of knowledge and understanding of the animal itself lost when you don't do your own hide prep, and just understanding of how the anatomy works and how to thin your hide. Obviously, you're losing out on a whole wealth of knowledge that you're skipping over. So I would really say to do it, take the time and learn to do the splitting and whatnot. And
absolutely, it's very important. Trophy care is, priority to a taxidermist, and the more that you handle your in-house, the more you control. Now at this point, I've split all the way from here to the edge of the lip. You can see this portion of the lip skin is not lifted up. This portion is, and the lip lays flat. So now when I come to the backside and apply salt, salt can penetrate through that. So I'm gonna go all the way around the mouth doing that. I won't make you sit here and watch me fumble through that. but it's we'll go all the way around the lip line.
Remember, you're using those new scissors.
I am. They're working great. They are working really good. So I just I've got the legs started. I bent my feet over, making his toes. You can kind of see how far I am down towards the toes of this cat. So I'm making his knuckles available so they kind of are out there. And then you can kind of come in. Now you could also do this with a knife and just kind of get your knife down in between those. I typically will just take a scissors. And it's really working nice. It's a good heavy duty scissors because those joints are kind of cupped. The joints are cupped around each other so it doesn't make a straight cut. So these really good sturdy scissors are working really nice. Just for disconnecting.
Does the curve help you in those with this?
It actually does, yeah, because you're able to get in there and kind of curve because that bone has a cup to it that goes around the
Ernesto
bone.
says that sure is going to be a lot of sewing this way, but I guess everyone has their own way of doing things.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It will be a lot of sewing.
Why do you prefer it?
I don't mind it. I don't mind doing this. Sewing doesn't bother me, I guess. And the incision is all hidden underneath. So it kind of depends on the position of the animal at the time as to what way I'm going to choose.
I bet Ernesto's never seen Amber sew either. Amber can sew. Make short work of sewing. So, yeah, but choosing the appropriate incision is very much personal preference. There's no right or wrong. If sewing isn't your thing, I would definitely say that there are options for you to minimize it. Certainly not saying that one of these is the right way and one is the wrong way.
Do you get a new blade every animal?
Yeah, I do.
Will that blade work for this whole animal, or would you switch throughout?
I would probably switch throughout.
Yeah.
I would probably, switch throughout.
I mean, it's cutting fast.
Yeah.
As you get close to bones and joints and so forth,
You'll
these
dull the blades.
Yeah, these little scalpels are designed to be very precise instruments, and you can dull the blade a little bit, but you'll go through 2 or 3 during the process.
It's starting to get a little smelly back here.
It is.
I got you.
Just a little bit.
My senses these days are a little bit more.
I've been dealing with the 2 otters today, so my senses are kind of burnt.
I'm going to show you real quick an ear. So I've gone around part of the lip line. I've lifted all of this skin forward as far as I need to. Now the ear on an otter is very small, but yet still needs to be turned. There's still cartilage inside of it. You guys that are familiar with your deer ears, basically same thing here, just a very much smaller version. I'm gonna need to split that so that, again, we can get salt all the way to the edge. I'm gonna put my finger on it here, flip it over to the back side, and you can see here where the ear canal enters the skull. And I've got just a little spot back here I'm gonna feel for. See if I can get this ear split.
Sorry. Good. So it's a boy.
It's a boy.
Jig and Jim says, do you need to have an idea of what form poses you want before skinning?
It's not a bad idea because again, it could maybe steer you away from doing a belly incision and then say, whoa, well, you know what, with that pose, I might really want to go to a dorsal cut. There's certain poses that I would just really steer away from doing belly cuts on, and that would be if they're having really, really extreme arm movements. So if they're back in a really sneaky position and they got one arm cranked way back and pushed way up against the body, that means that this incision is going to be up inside of that armpit area and virtually impossible to try and sew. So at that point, I would say, you know what, with that, maybe we'll want to go to a dorsal cut just to keep the incisions in an easy access area.
Yeah, it helps an awful lot to have that information. If you don't have that information, a lot of times we'll just choose to case skin an animal. That's kind of a minimal incision, and then we can make the decision later. Do we open it up to a belly cut, or do we do we go with a dorsal cut, as Rob had asked about the fox?
Yep, you could always go from that.
Yeah.
Larry Wiggins, it looks like Brett is using a number 11 blade on a 3 handle.
Yes, I am.
Did I surprise you?
Yeah, that's very good. No, and I'll do that. I'm very fond of the number 11. Again, scalpels are all real personal, but when I get in close and want to do detail work like this, the very tip, the very point of that number 11 is critical for me, because if I do happen to puncture it and make a hole, it's only going to be as big as the tip there, versus a rounded blade, I may have a much bigger hole.
So the interesting thing with the scalpel handles, there's 2 different size handles that hold the different blades. The number 11 is our most popular for the 3 handle. The number 22, which Amber's using, is the most popular for the number 6 blade. But they have, the number 10 blade is similar to the 22.
Yep.
Why don't you use that one?
This one's got a little bit of a bigger cutting surface.
Okay.
It's just bigger, so I
Is
feel
that
like
so? It's
I
larger blades on the large handle. Got it.
Yeah, and I like the curve of the number 10 and the number 22. I just choose to go with the 22 just because it's got a larger cutting surface. But Brett's exactly right. When you get into detail, the pointed one of the number 11 works really, really nice for getting in, especially by toes and little critter faces.
Yeah, and for this otter, I'm going to turn him back over here. You can see I'm just to the very, very edge there. I've got probably a less than 1/8 of an inch, maybe a 1/16 to go to the very end, and I'm going to probably call it pretty good right there. I think I've got that ear split pretty well. So if this were a bobcat or a fox or a bigger animal, same principle. I'm going to do the same thing. It's just going to be bigger. There is a little secondary auricle that we'll have to split on the cats and the dogs, but for the most part, that's what we're after. We've got it turned far enough that salt is going to get all the way to the edge. Also, on an otter or actually any other animal, the nose here has been removed from the skull. It was cut back all the way back here at this point. And so this is the cartilage of the inner nostril. This is the septum here. And we're going to split the septum so that we have the two sides exposed. The reason we're going to do this is, again, we've got to get salt all the way to the front of the skin, the epidermis, and we have to get the cartilage pulled away from that from the inside. So I'm going to turn this nose and then split the septum, and I'm going to go quick so we can not be
I am up close. I usually be
Mandy is being a trooper here. This is
I
not.
wasn't thinking clearly when we agreed to this.
Yeah, this might have been something better for another day when you may not have
I
had
come
camera
from the pretty
duty.
work.
No, this is a small part of what we do, but it is critical. It's very, very important. Good taxidermy starts, like we said earlier, it starts right here, right now, in proper prep work, hide preparation, and there's no other way to explain it than to show you, and it's something we do get some questions about. So.
And it does make a big difference. There's a lot of people who try to skimp, it seems like, on splitting things, and then when you get down to mounting them, mounting eyelids and things like that haven't been split all the way, mounting ears especially that haven't been split all the way. That's all stuff that's going to show in your end product. So
there truly are no shortcuts when it comes to this. We'd all like to find one, but there really isn't a shortcut. So now I've got this cartilage split away from the skin all the way to the front here. So all of this is split away now where my thumb is. And I'm going to Now take out the septum. I'm gonna cut, we don't save a whole bunch of the septum on these small animals, so I'm gonna remove this portion, allowing just a little bit of tuck skin to go on the inside. Like so. And then I'm gonna split down the remainder of the septum and separate the two nostril wings like this.
Diana Ward, will different poses give you different length measurements?
That's a great question. Yes, they will, especially the way the carcass is bent. I think there's a little debate over how to measure for certain forms. And Amber, you might have some thoughts on.
As far as when you first measure the carcass and it's laying on the table, or?
Yeah, your initial measurements that you're going to order from. What measurements do you like to order from?
Yeah, you mean as far as the actual measurements, the eye to nose? Yeah. I like to have the animal, I don't typically have the animal all curled up in a ball, because then your length measurement will seem too long. So I like to straighten them out as much as what you can. Sometimes there's a little bit of rigor mortis or whatnot kind of kicking in, so the animals might be kind of stiff, but kind of like this, I laid it out real nice and flat. He kind of had his chin way tucked down like this. I'd like to straighten that out. It doesn't have to be completely, but just kind of straighten it out a little bit, and I think that kind of gives a little bit more of a true to length measurement. I think that's what you were asking, right?
Yeah. So if she had an extreme pose, a bobcat jumping, legs extended, really stretched out, would you try to measure the carcass in that position?
I guess you could.
If you knew it.
If you knew it, yeah, that's the thing. If you knew the position, it might not be bad information to have.
Sure. And
see how that varies from if it was just laying on the table, see how much of a difference if it varies. Yeah.
And we'll come back real quick here. So I've got the nose now split. Both wings are opened up. We've got quite a bit of tissue that we need to get rid of. And otter have a real thick, heavy whisker pad. So there's some whiskers right here in the front of the face that are still intact. We'll leave those in place through this part of the process, probably take them out later. But at this point, we're gonna leave those, but I am gonna take a lot of this tissue that was left from the skinning process. We're gonna take some of that off now. Also the eye, so there is a small apron around the eye. This is from the inside here. And so we're gonna split from here to the eyelid and from here to the eyelid, so that also will get plenty of salt to it. Gonna go just like this.
What animal is best for beginners?
Ooh.
Raccoons are good. Raccoons are kind of a good animal.
Yep, inexpensive, readily available, nice long hair, fairly forgiving. They tan up nice. Raccoons would be a great one.
The faces seem to kind of,
yeah,
they're a good confidence builder.
Yeah.
I think they're easier to make look better than what some animals are.
Yeah. Coyotes would be a good one. Yeah. Some detail work in the face and eye set on a coyote that will challenge a beginner, but definitely a good animal because they are readily available. I would tell a beginner maybe the best animal or most appropriate animal for them to work on is the one they have the best reference for. So if you can get good reference, whether it's for an otter or a coyote or a bobcat or what, if you've got significantly better reference for one animal than another, you might want to go that way. this is the best reference material available for this bobcat, the carcass itself. So don't throw your carcass. Don't be in a hurry to throw your carcass, I should say. A lot of good, valuable information there too. But yeah, we see students do kind of the whole spectrum of mounts for beginners of the small mammals. We'll see bobcats, we'll see fox, we'll see coyotes, and with coaching and someone there, they managed to do them pretty well. We had some really nice ones come out of the last class.
Really nice, really nice. Yeah. I think fox tend to be more difficult.
That's a tough one.
On the face. I'm more intimidated by a fox face than a bobcat face.
Yep.
Their hair can be very finicky, so I would steer most beginners away from a fox.
Yeah, they're very delicate.
They're
They
very
slip
delicate.
very easily. Ears slip. Fox are tough. Fox are really tough.
Yep. So for a confidence booster, that's probably not your go-to animal to be like, yeah, I can do this.
Right. And Andy, I've got this eye taken care of. So now that apron of skin that did lay from here to here, I've split it all the way to the front of the eyelid, and that's all taken care of now, all the way to here. So you can see the eyelid, and this now lays forward all the way to the edge of the eyelid. So that would be as far as we would take it. Now for salt prep, we'll of course come back and do some more work later after it has been rehydrated and tanned. We talked about the next phase of this little live segment, and we could see a tanning portion, small mammal tanning at some point. We've got quite a few things going in the next couple of weeks with shows and such, but I think that would be the next logical step for some of these critters.
Yeah, the small mammal tanning, I feel, is a lot simpler than when you get into your big animals like deer and whatnot, just because so many of these small mammals don't require a fleshing wheel in order to be able to tan them. So that can be really helpful, because fleshing wheels it's an expensive tool, and not every taxidermist out there has that available for use. So that would be the one thing that would stop a person from tanning a lot of animals would be just that they don't have access to a fleshing wheel. Whereas these little animals, you can scrape them on the beam after they've been in the pickle and through the pickling process, and you wouldn't have to have a fleshing wheel in order to complete a tan. So now I've got the whole thing off, except for right down the back. All the legs are all removed, and I'm getting hung up here on the tail. Andy, you're doing so good. And so we're gonna go ahead and remove this tail. We like to use right here what's a tail puller, and you can see there's two different holes in it, one for a larger size tail and one for a smaller. I like to work it down a little bit, because a lot of what's holding that tail inside, we're gonna tube out this tail basically, so that we don't have to make an incision down the tail. So I'm just gonna go right around, cut through the butt skin and make it all the way down to the tail. So now we're starting to make all of that show up. I'd like to go down a little ways, especially on certain animals. Certain animals will have such strong tail skin that they will not pull. You could cut the tail off and do it off of the animal. I like to do it on, because this takes quite a bit of pressure to be able to pull. So I'm going to figure out which one I want to use. This one's got a little bit of slack. I would be a little worried about using that. You see how there's some gap in there? I don't really want the hide to be able to go up underneath that tool. So I would prefer to use the smaller one on a tail like this. And I'm just gonna pinch it right in that hole area, get a hold of it with my hands. And then you can put one hand up on his area here and then just give a pull, and there it goes. and now it just popped right out.
I will never look at that tool the same. I never knew what it did. Now we sell that in the plastic and the aluminum.
Yeah.
Which obviously you're using aluminum because we
I
had
like
it
the
first and you
aluminum.
like it better.
Yeah, I like
Is
the
the plastic
aluminum.
the same exact, or is it different?
I think it operates the same.
Sure.
It
Looks
might,
the same.
Yeah, I think it might challenge your coyotes or your coons that are a little bit harder to pull.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
on those
it's
animals, you're gonna have to probably skin them down a ways.
Yeah.
I've got quite a bit of a flank on this here, which is kind of funny, but I think it's just because of the
worries at all.
timed. I'm just like, get
Yeah.
the skin off.
Any tricks on facial repairs for short-haired animals?
Short-haired animals. I think, just really, really small, pretty stitches.
Yep, small threads, pretty
Thin,
stitches,
yep.
Nice clean cuts.
In white hair, I like to use white thread. That the black fire line and things like that sometimes doesn't always hide the best in that little short muzzle hair and things like that.
Can you use a fleshing wheel on green animal?
A fleshing wheel, yes you can.
Yep.
Yep.
Yep, sure can. Works pretty well. We do that oftentimes, but you don't have to have one. And we'll show you today. You can. I've got a piece here that we can throw over the beam that we're gonna have to get clean and get taken off. While Amber's working to the head, do you want to show them as you're going around the ears, or should I take a toe out?
I think you could go ahead and take a toe out.
Okay. I'll go fast.
And then you start that. If I get up to the ears before that, then I'll just stop.
Okay.
How about doing shoulder mounts of smaller animals as a learning curve to doing the heads?
That would be a good. That would be a great thing. Life-size animals can be a little intimidating because there's so much to think about. You have the legs, you have the tails, the armpits, the bodies. There's a lot to think about, so it can be overwhelming for somebody who's doing a small critter for the first time. So a little shoulder mount would actually be a great way to try and start.
Yeah, definitely. Just breaking the process down a little bit. So what I've got here on the otter, Amber had skinned this earlier and she clipped the toes off, very similar to what she did here with the bobcat. There's still a knuckle joint left in the skin that we need to get removed. And I am going to do that real quick here. Otter have a pretty significant webbing between their toes, as do most animals, but real significant on an otter because he's a swimmer. So I'm gonna get that split, and then I'm gonna just go all the way around the toe itself and take it right back here to a mounting stand. And we're gonna use the weight of the skin itself to help us. And we've got a little battery clip here. Works pretty well.
It works tremendously well for pulling because then you don't have to. Otherwise, it seems like the hide's kind of sliding across the table. And I mean, is there a way to do this without the battery clip and the mounting stand? Sure.
That works the same as our
this-
gambrels, correct?
It's just a way of getting a hold of that toe bone to be able to just put some pressure on it so that you can skin it out. And what he's doing there, he's actually kind of letting the weight of the hide and slightly maybe putting a little bit of pressure on it to help it split. And he's pressing very, very lightly with that scalpel.
Yeah.
If you didn't have the weight pulling that away from the bone, it makes it trickier to get a toe out without cutting a hole.
Yep, so I'm just gonna go right here, take that off, and that is right at the end of the claw, so I can get my finger all the way up and feel the very back of the claw. So right to there. And we'll continue and do that all the way through for every one of these little toes. Four-toed critters are more fun than five. When
Do you
it
have a
comes to
favorite
this.
stitch for the short hair repairs?
I guess it doesn't matter to me. I typically stick with a baseball stitch.
Yep.
I don't switch a whole lot. Sometimes I use a whip stitch, but very rarely. Most of the time it's just a baseball stitch.
Yeah. Anything you can sew neatly and clean
That's the main
is
thing.
probably what I would recommend, your go-to stitch, if you can sew it nice and neat and clean, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Ted Ireland says, great video, a lot of talent in that shop. Not sure if I will be eating dinner tonight. I'm with you, Ted. Pure talent here. I could not be a doctor, a nurse, or a taxidermist, but they sure know how to do it.
So there's a couple of toes. Amber, I think, is down to the ears now on the cat, so we'll let you go. I'm just going to keep going on each one of these toes.
Yep. So I just kind of worked it away down the neck, and I've got it. I had it to the back of the skull, continued to work it forward, and then as soon as you start to see that back of the skull, you can feel that movement in the head. I start being careful about how deep I'm cutting, because right here, we're on top of the ears. That ear cartilage and his whole ear is right back here. So I try to continue working it down as far as I can, and then you'll kind of get to a point where, you know, it's kind of stuck. You know, it's not gonna go a whole lot further. So at that point, I like to get a hold of this skin. You can kind of see where the skin is coming off of the head, and just kind of get a hold of it and lift it up and away, and you'll see and feel this whole pocket pull up. And then you're just going to make an incision here, and you can kind of see where it's just riding on top of that muscle. Come right down and make a cut and pull it forward. We'll do the same thing on the other side.
What's the purpose of your rag that you keep covering up?
I just covering it up so that we can keep it as not gory as we can.
Appreciate it. Just wondering if it was saving the meat for supper or what?
No, just trying to keep it as not gory as I can. I know a lot of people aren't used to this, and for us, we're used to it, so it, you know, we're just yeah.
And it doesn't help. It doesn't hurt to minimize blood. That looks like the fatal injury to Mr. Bobcat, and so he is going to bleed from that, and it will do you a lot of help now to be conscious and clean in your skinning process. Keep as much blood out of the hair as you can, and you don't have to worry about getting it out later.
And it's nice to I always keep a bucket of water with a towel to try and keep a clean work area. That's the thing. During this time of year, it's not a clean time of year, and you're going to be busy taking in animals, but you should be just as busy cleaning up after taking in animals. So that's an important thing, is just remember cleanliness after dealing with all of these things, to really go through and thoroughly clean everything. Yep. So as soon as you get your ears off, we're coming forward, and now we're to the back of the eyes. You can kind of see this light area, and you can even feel in there the orbit of the eye. So I'm just gonna start kind of cutting forward here. And I can see that white eye ring. We're gonna cut right in front of that, kind of angling the knife back and kind of making a circle around. And as you do that, you'll start to see that skin come forward, and we're right up on top of the eye. You can kind of see it right there. I'm gonna make a cut right through and expose the eye. I typically will just put my finger up inside to be able to put a little bit of pressure on that hide as I'm making the cuts, and just help it pull forward. Now on these little animals, their mouths come back a lot further than on deer. Typically with deer, you get the eye out and then you'll be able to move forward on the face. His mouth is all the way back here, so we're already at it. So I just make a cut through, again, to kind of expose that inner mouth area, and then I'm just gonna take that scalpel and follow it right up all along his teeth. Sometimes the teeth will get in the way. It's not a bad idea to have a dowel or something that you can kind of put down in there to help separate that mouth so that you can continue to cut, because with animals that have large teeth, it can be difficult to be able to get all the way up by your gum line.
Over, Mama.
Well, I think the pregnant lady's doing good.
She's doing super.
She is doing super.
And in the interest of time, I know we are short of time. We're gonna move real fast through the next few steps, just to make sure we get them shown to you, because I think I can see the battery light on Mandy's phone. So.
And we have a giveaway and a couple show stuff to go over too.
A couple called about Corey, and I said that he was ill and he'd be here next Thursday.
He did. He was supposed to be here today, and he got the flu, and so he's doing the Widgeon mounting a widgeon, kind of do's and don'ts of that next Thursday.
You are fast, Amber.
She is.
She is.
Hour done.
You both look like you're having a great
I know.
time.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Hold this.
Okay.
Took this away over here.
You know, if I hold it, it gets, ooh, my fingers over it. See? How'd I do?
And we are getting just about through these toes. I think we've got, about 9 out of 20 out.
That's not even half, so just about. We've got
We're
a
getting
good
very
start.
close. We got a great start. But at this point, Amber's got the skin off. We've kind of jumped back and forth. So we would go to the face, cleaning up the face, which we did earlier. You can see this face is all nice and clean. She's got the ears turned, the nose taken care of, the lips are split, the toes are just about out. Same thing needs to happen to the bobcat. And then the entire hide, if you look at how nice and pretty and clean she's got this one, the entire hide needs to look like this. We need to remove all fat. Salt will not penetrate fat. It will act almost like a plastic bag as a barrier between the skin and the salt. It won't do any good. So, she's got it nice and clean.
That whole animal, off of each of those otter, I got at least a very large grapefruit amount of fat and whatnot off of it. So it looked very much like this. This is, bobcats are typically a lot cleaner, but you'll run into a lot of stuff like this where there is fat and there is different flanks of meat and whatnot stuck on there. You cannot salt through that. It won't penetrate through that. So it's really, really vital that we clean up these hides. On an otter and on beaver, that meat and that fat is welded onto the hide, and it can be a real pain to get off.
Yeah,
it is
does
not
remove very
not
easily.
fun. So typically you can use several different knives. I was talking with Fred about it earlier. I used to like using an ulu knife. A lot of people have a lot of luck with that.
I have a quick question from Caleb. Would doing a coyote be a lot like a bobcat?
Yes. Yep. Very, very similar. And when doing a coyote, I would definitely consider doing a dorsal cut on a coyote. Get up in there.
Amber is removing all of the fat and the meat tissue here, folks. This is not easy to do. She's making it look very easy.
Well, it's
but there's a lot of experience behind that scalpel right now. So do be careful. We don't want to cut a bunch of extra holes in it.
No.
But she's making short work of that patty of meat, and she did that entire skin the same way. Got him all cleaned up that way, and he looks great. He is going to be ready for salt.
She's practicing for the horse, isn't she?
Now, this is I would only do this on this kind of animal. Any other kind of animal, we're going to use a different method of getting it off. It's just because these animals, that meat in the fat is so welded on. For other animals, we like to use a fleshing beam. And this is it's very used, so there's a bunch of different little chips and nicks throughout the years, and that'll get like that, but it doesn't really affect the wear on it. And these are really nice for just about everything. You would want to do this even to your deer. A lot of people are afraid, it seems like, of the fleshing beam, and it's not. It's more intimidating than anything else. It's not anything to be afraid of. I like this fleshing knife. This one is the one that I prefer to use. It's dull. It's not sharp, so it's not gonna cut you. It's just it's a dull scraper. Yep. Now they do make other ones that are sharper. And do we carry the bigger one, the green one?
It's the blue. We have the blue, the 12-inch and the 8-inch.
And those I believe are sharper.
Yes.
Than this. So if you would get that one, that works great too. It works great on animals with really thick hides, like buffalo and things where you're really going to need to get in to be able to cut through that. But for most animals, even deer, I prefer to use the dull one because I can put the pressure on this. I'm a little short for this mounting stand, so I made myself a nice little stand here that I stand on. And the reason I'm doing that, the main thing when you're doing a fleshing beam is that you want to be up above it. If you're standing down here, like if I didn't have my little stand and I was here, I'd be trying to do all of this upper body, it'd be way too high for me and I wouldn't be able to get good pressure downward. So if I stand up, now all of a sudden my upper body is up above that and I can use my upper body weight to do the work for me instead of having to put all the pressure on that. And so we're just gonna, and it, like I said, it's a very dull scraper. A lot of times I do like to have this turn so that it's up against something because I have a tendency to scoop myself right across the room. So for this, I'm just gonna go ahead and butt it up right here against the table. So if you start seeing the table with thread going across the room, it's my fault. And we're just gonna nice and lightly scrape. And sometimes even just using a sideways motion, sometimes even using a sideways motion like this can help cut through and get up underneath of that fat. So you can kind of see once you get it started, it'll start to get right down there to the skin. Now just because it's dull doesn't mean it can't cut or rip a hole. So you still want to take a little bit of caution. Fox, be extra careful of. Any of these small little animals, you want to start to be really careful once you start getting down into the crotch area and the belly area. The skin gets very, very thin and is more susceptible to ripping. But you can kind of see here how that hide is, that meat and the fat is just starting to roll right off.
And that is critical. We've got to get this thing ready for salt. That's the last step. And once Amber is all done, we will salt these. I will show you quick on this one. I've still got a couple toes yet to do, but we're gonna rub some salt on here. Does that work, Amber, if I salt this off?
Yeah, you bet. Yep.
Okay. Do we have salt up?
I do not believe I have any salt in there. And typically I've got a specific area where we like to do this, so I'm able to get a little bit better hold on this hide. But as it starts to creep down, just kind of lift it back up and keep it in a comfortable working area for your arms. And in the beginning, when you first start doing this, it can be a little bit of a rigorous kind of a motion, but after you get used to it, it does get easier and easier as time goes on. It's a great tool for getting hides cleaned. And you can see this hide is just getting clean, clean, clean. It's all the way down, and that's gonna salt really nice. Yep.
Now I actually see a lot of this too, and Rob's asking thoughts on pressure washing fat off the meat.
Yep, I've been hearing a lot about that too. And that does work, and it is a great option as well. Doing pressure washing. Brett, do you have
Deal with weather as well.
The only suggestions I would have with pressure washing, or cautions I would offer, is remember, bacteria requires heat and moisture. Adding water is something to be cautious of. We need to make sure we get him good and dry. If that is your if that's going to be your method for fleshing. So I'm just going to take and
Can you show me what salt you're using?
I can. This is just a stock salt. Only important, we prefer a very fine salt. Think that it dissolves better in our pickles and as we go through the tanning process, but it's just a very fine white mixing salt. It is non-iodized. Important there. Iodized salt will turn it kind of a purpley blue, which does wash out, but if you're buying salt, make sure you're getting non-iodized salt. That'll save you on having to get rid of it. I would tell you, a little bit of salt rubbed in is much better than a lot of salt dumped on. We want to get it all the way down into these toes that we took out. So I'll make sure that I've got some salt going down in there. I'm gonna rub this on.
And what does the salt do?
the salt is going to cause, it's going to basically remove the moisture. If you think of salt as a basically draws moisture, it's going to pull all of the moisture out and cause this hide to dry really fast. By this time tomorrow, this hide should be very, very dry. It's going to, we'll leave it out, and it's going to weep moisture for several hours. It's just going to drip and drip and drip, and that will be that's critical to getting him stable and removing that bacteria, that element for bacteria growth. And we would do this whether we were sending it to the tannery, to a commercial tannery, or tanning ourselves. You can see I still have some toes here to get out, so I'm not gonna rub it in there. I'm gonna come right down the tail, making sure that I get the salt everywhere, over all of the exposed area of skin. Make sure you're getting it turned completely. And the one thing I can see here that I'll mention quickly that we do with all of ours, and all of your major studios will do that, is we're going to put an identification code in this. Everybody can do that, so whatever your tannery directs or your own personal shop preference, but ours is a 3-digit numeric code that gets punched into the hide itself. This one happens to be number 222, and we would depict that with 2 dots, 2 more dots, and then in the third spot we'll have another 2. So if it was 223, the code would look just like this, and we'd have 1 more dot on the bottom. And that we'll do with a fine scalpel. And our tanneries prefer that we put it in the lower left quadrant of the animal. And then when all of those tags get removed during the tanning process, we can still identify this as Austin's otter, as number 222, and we know exactly what to do. We can go back to our record book and find the directions and information for otter number 222, and we'll go there. Now I'm also going to make sure that I am very careful to rub this in around the lip line that we split, the eyelids, around the nostrils, and then very important, and on an otter, we're awfully small, but we'll turn him around here. We'll turn this ear inside out, just like that, and we will also salt inside the ear skin, like so. So now I've got that little pouch full of salt, and we'll do the same thing for the other one. And you would do that no matter what your species. You're going to salt from the inside and the outside.
And doing it from the inside will help do what?
It will help set the hair on the inner ear hair, and keep you from losing that. We can ensure that we have hair on the inside of the ear and the outside.
Sure.
Brandon says, how do I get to see this? It says this video may show graphic or violent content. I don't know, Brandon, but it does. No, it might change when I post it, when I hit finish, so we'll see there. Otherwise, it might just be Facebook saving the people that don't want to see this kind of thing. But we definitely will have a follow-up video on it, on their process.
You've got some stuff. I think we've got this about all the way through our process, don't we, Amber?
I think so. The only thing that I did forget to mention when I pulled the tail was when he was talking about some of the different things about saving the hair, is when you pull a tail, this tail has been tubed now, and there is no way for any fluid that might get down into that tail to be able to release. So if this would go into a pickle or salted or whatnot, those extra fluids wouldn't have anywhere to go. So when you pull a tail and you've got a tubed out tail, you are going to want to make a small incision in the very end tip of the tail, and that's going to allow any of that to be able to release and get out, and again helping to save the end of your tip of your tail. If you don't do this, you're at risk that some of those juices could get down to the end and it would ferment basically, and you would possibly lose the tip of your tail. So to make sure that doesn't happen, I just made a small incision in the very bottom of your tail, and that's really important. When you go to salt, this with the otter, in order to get an otter tail out, you had to be able to make a cut all the way down. There was no way you're going to ever be able to pull an otter tail, but with the bobcat we could. When you salt inside of a bobcat tail, you would simply take the salt and push it down inside of that tail, and then I like to take a wire of some sort and work it down inside of there until I see salt come out that tip. Then I know that there's salt that has gotten pushed all the way down in, and that the tip of the tail for sure is going to end up getting salted and preserved along with the rest of the hide.
Yep, definitely. And then speaking, just one more tip on that tail. As Amber had pulled the tail and removed the carcass, it's a real good time to take a measurement. So include that measurement. We've got tail measurement here on this measurement sheet, right from the very base of it to the tip of the tail, and that will help you when it comes time to reconstruct that tail, whether you buy a commercial tail or wrap your own. You know how long that is, because a tail is something that varies for every animal. Tail length varies from animal to animal within the species. So some bobcats will have a real short tail, some will have a fairly long tail. So do take that measurement. Mandy, I know you've got a bunch of business to do. What do we need to do next?
All sorts of business to do. Why don't you take your gloves off so you can touch my phone?
Oh my gosh. I can do that.
Gosh. We did have, I gotta find it. Jeremy Lacey says, my 10-year-old son just mounted his first deer. He learned a lot from watching Clint Ricky's DVD series. On that note, Brett is going actually to judge with Clint Ricky and Lance Johnson and Todd Cranow, who also is a Northwest Iowa School alumni. But they're judging South Dakota, and we are actually sending, Brett, those are your tubs if you want to open them up and pull some things out that you're going to have at the South Dakota show. We unfortunately are not having a booth there, but you will have the Competitors Award there, both of them. And then there's Clint's DVDs, so find Brett. He will have Clint's DVDs. We got the turkey one we're sending.
A few from Blake and Cole, Taxidermy University DVDs,
Yep.
On turkeys.
And then we'll send the whitetail, mounting a competition whitetail.
I think that might be in here too. We've got, looks like some super cool scissors. There's
curved
Clint's
scissors.
DVD.
Yes.
I've been asked to do a seminar, so we put together a seminar on one of our favorite products that we've been using lately in the shop, and that is pan pastels. We're gonna do that, as well as some basic starting points for fish painting. So we've got some applicators and things like that. We'll have just a real small
It's
those.
small, exciting new stuff that we're just going to share with people.
Yep.
They're going to stay in the tubs, but if you are there, find Brett.
Yes.
One of the things with the shows, if you guys are going to shows, check with us, because we do offer discounts for being a member of the associations. Just an added perk for that association. And then also, because we're not going there, if you contact Brett, place an order or whatnot, we'll honor that. So let us know. Show discount, yep. And the Minnesota next week, we are taking pre-orders. So with the pre-orders for the show, you save on shipping, which is huge. And you also get 15% off of your order. So big savings with your shows and associations. So take advantage of that.
Can I show them this?
Yeah.
This is super cool. I can't wait for people to see this. Mandy has been working very hard for several months. She's worked with a few different photographers that have some tremendous deer reference.
Dan Vareps is one, and he gave us permission to use his pictures along with Lacey Cones, and then our very own pets that Matuska Taxidermy ones that we'd take from raising deer for 30 years. So we have some awesome reference. This is our nose one that Brett's kind of showing you. The detail on these pictures are just phenomenal.
Yep, super
just
cool.
variety.
So these are hot off the press.
Hot off the press.
Just got it back today. So we'll share those with you at the show. You've got noses,
Show me the
eyes,
eye one.
deer. Oh, look at, they're labeled on the spine. I should know that.
The books are extremely high quality. I mean, they're just phenomenal.
So these books are usually $39, and we're selling for straight $30.
at the show.
Yep.
Cards only, no cash, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna make me count. I
Nope.
don't want to count.
Nope, I don't want to fix your counting. Kidding. This would be the eye one. Again,
is
just
super
huge
cool
detail. You
stuff.
got both. Is the reference book on the site yet? Lindsay, I wish I was that good, but I was short-staffed today. So no, they aren't, but the girls in the office know about them. So all you need to do in your checkout, if you're placing an order online, put in the comments that you want the large eye book or the large nose book, and we'll get that placed. If you are calling in, just mention it to them, and they should be able to help you out on that.
Super cool. I think that's. Oh.
Corey's coming next week, and he was supposed to be here to show his heads are phenomenal. They are awesome. But for those of you that use the spring wattle, his pheasants are very popular. This is a new one just off, and it is the open mouth spring wattle head. I mean, the detail is just fantastic on these. But so this is going to be a huge seller. This is the 123-105. Also not online because it's hot off the press, but the ladies know about it. So this is available and new. We have a winner from last week.
Oh, yeah.
I'm trying to think of what I'm going to eat for supper tonight.
Not Bobcat.
Our winner from last week is Richard Holland. So Richard Holland, you get the curved scissors.
Nice.
So can you show me those curved scissors, Amber, one more time?
There's these right here.
So these are the new ones. Spring loaded. Nice curve. You were excited to use them for fish.
Yeah, yeah, I think they're very exciting. There's
They're
several
really
different
nice that
options.
they have the spring on them, so you don't have to sit there and try and open them back up.
So that is online. Just saying. I would like to get a shout out to Roger Early. Thank you. He gave us a recommendation on Facebook and says, excellent company and awesome products. Love the little added chocolates with the orders. We love positive feedback. We love when you guys recommend us or give us reviews on Facebook. So you can go and do that on our page. If you're bored and have time, we appreciate it. Next week is with Corey, and it's mounting a flying widgeon. The most common mistakes people make positioning the wing and how to correct that while reading reference. So make sure to check that out. Share this video right now. Share it. And you'll be in the chance to win for next week. So you gotta share it. So make sure you share it.
Anybody that shares
Share.
goes into the pool.
Yes,
the drawing.
and
Yep.
we don't pick the winner until next Thursday. So let's say you couldn't watch today's live. Just pick it. You can share it all throughout the week. We won't pick it till next week. And for those that it says it's showing violent or graphic content, all you have to do is click uncover the video and you should be good to go. So enter at your own risk. Big thanks to Tom and Derek Harriman for going live at the Utah show. So you guys can go check that out. There's a lot of cool pieces there. So check that out.
Yep. We'll go live tomorrow from South Dakota.
South Dakota, we'll do a
provided
live
I get there.
walkthrough.
Yep. Yep.
You'll
Sounds
make
like
it.
it's pretty ugly, but we should be there by noon tomorrow.
So live walkthrough in South Dakota coming up tomorrow, and then your pan pastel seminar is going to be what day?
3 o'clock tomorrow,
Oh, so both. You'll have 2 lives tomorrow, people. So
we think.
make sure you like and follow because you will be able to be notified if you're not already. Thanks for tuning in. Big thanks to Amber and Brett for filling in today with Corey being sick and Tom being in Utah. And I'm patting myself on the back for
big
staying
thanks to
strong
you
since Kirsten's out.
For running the camera. You did
I didn't know
great.
Kristen could have done
You
it.
did
Oh,
fantastic.
man.
You did good. You did very
You
good.
did
There's a
very
reason
good.
I'm behind the desk. But you guys did awesome. Thank you guys. We wouldn't be here without you, and we so appreciate all of our customers. So thank you so much, and we'll catch you next week.